Oh, it's really quite something. It's beautiful. Wow. Wow. Today's video is all about that feeling of your jaw dropping and you feeling very small in the world. You're feeling something called wonder. Maybe you're even feeling something called Sonder, which I will explain in a minute. We shouldn't be going to school just to check a list off, just to getting homework done, though it takes hard work and it takes good habits to become remarkable people. We shouldn't just be going to school just to get straight A's so we avoid a lecture from our parents. We should be using what came naturally to us as young kids, that ability called wonder. And while I'm just being silly with a cat, I would like to tell you a story about one of the last times I had great wonder just vibrating through my body. One of the greatest times of my life was also one of the most painful times of my life. Luckily, my emotions were not hurt. It was a time of great physical pain. I went on a long road trip 2 summers ago, and I got into Canada, one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's called Jasper National Park. I was at a very simple cabin. It's called a hostel. I made a friend at 10 p.m. at night, and an hour later, we decided to go on a 34-mile hike through the mountains over the next 2 days. This was a little strange because I have never hiked that long before, and I've never really camped away from a campground before. It took a lot of trust to know someone for an hour, to figure out that they're probably safe and knowledgeable enough to help me to protect themselves. So we did what's called a through hike in the Jasper National Park. And after our first full day of 18 miles, we just collapsed on picnic tables and napped. And then we went to bed after a little dinner. That's all we really wanted to do. And at 3 in the morning, we got up. And this national park is one of the few spaces left on Earth where there's no light pollution, where we were deep enough where there's no city lights to affect the skies. So we spent about 45 minutes in the middle of the night just sitting and kind of doing what I did at the start of this video. And you think you've seen the stars. Something that's always, it's a picture that moves a lot of us, but you think you've seen the stars, but then when you really get away from the city and get away from the lights, all of a sudden there's just such a patchwork. There's such a quilt of light. And it was quite something. I felt a lot of what's called wonder. And when I looked to my friend, who I had not known for longer than 20 hours, I began to sonder, which means the profound realization that everyone, even strangers walking on the street, feel the exact same feelings that you do, that this man's life was as complex, as exciting and boring and painful as mine. And he was constantly living in this experience, even if I wasn't aware of it. It was a very strong moment. Well, to finish up this story, I went on another road trip this year. It was different. I had to be very safe about it. But there was just one time when I was in the Mississippi Delta, just away from the world again. I was by the Mississippi River. First time a snake's ever been so close to me. But as I got in my tent, I decided to get up in the middle of the night to honor my experience with my friend. And at 3:30 a.m., I got up there, looked at the stars. It did not look the same. It wasn't disappointing. It just looked different. And I kind of wondered there's no way that this is the same sky and stars that I saw with my friend Tim in the mountains way up north. And yet, it was, in a way, the same. So that's just my word for you today. It is okay to wonder. A lot of times people say we need to grow up. A lot of times we need to grow out of things. We need to be more mature. We need to grow out of those silly things. They're not wrong. But hopefully we can grow up with some of these powerful things that we felt as kids. Some of you are coming from Cho's Wonder class, and it is probably going to feel like a while since you got to mix with some of these Potter's House middle schoolers. That's going to feel even more frustrating because, masks on and distance, and maybe you don't have access to all of your friends because they're in a different homeroom. But Mr. Cho's class represents not just those people, but just his teaching represents that idea. Why are we going back to school? Why are we going? Just to pass so you can eventually get a job? Okay. Just to please your parents so they don't get mad? I did that too. And being in a classroom, you certainly will not feel those moments like I just described in Jasper National Park. And yet there's a surprise in every moment. There's a surprise awaiting for you. You could have probably guessed that the start of my video was a cat descending, because it's just getting predictable. And that's the beauty. The more experience that you gain, perhaps the less exciting life is, because you're like, I've done this before. And yet there still can be a surprise in every moment, even if you've experienced before. It's like those stars. Those stars in Mississippi were completely different. And yet, I was amazed, I was mesmerized that they were the same sky and the same galaxy that I had seen with a man that I only knew for 48 hours. I've never seen again. So that's all I have to say today. Hopefully you take some moments this year to let your words be few, for us not to overanalyze everything or over-explain. Just be like, wow, we just read about this really weird, really cool thing. I wonder how that works. That's amazing. Today's question. Anything. Tell me what you wonder about. You could wonder about anything. You could wonder about a little bit more about how school's going to go. That's perfectly fine. What do you wonder about? What do you wonder about? And I guess I'll have to close with what I said I'd talk to you about yesterday. A lot of you answered, and I think we did get 9. A lot of you answered what you noticed first about people. I think I noticed 2 things. One is visible, and one is invisible. I noticed the eyes first, which is, I'm glad, because the eyes are above the mask. I notice that if the eyes are steady, if the eyes are comfortable, if the person's feeling safe, or like me in 6th and 7th grade, the eyes are darting all around, checking, am I okay? What's going on? I don't like the eye contact. And then the invisible thing is a little bit, I guess I'd notice a person's presence and confidence. And so it's taken a while, but even as someone walks towards me or someone's sitting in the room, I can kind of feel a mood, or I can feel an energy and say, oh, the students are having a good day today. Or, huh, there must have been a problem last class because there is a mood in here. And so, because I have those like senses, it keeps me very curious. I haven't lost my wonder. And I hope you don't either. So tell me today, what do you wonder about?